Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Let's talk about all the books I read in August and do some quick reviews for all of them. August was a really chaotic reading month for me. I had a massive reading slump. I don't know, I kind of burned out on fantasy and I tried to fix that towards the end of the month, but yeah. It means that I listen to a lot more like non-fiction audiobooks because those are kind of a default if I don't know what to read. So I listened to a lot of those. I did a reread to get back into things, and I had some rather disappointing reads in the month. So yeah, let's get slowly through them. The month actually started really strong. Yeah, the first one I actually read in August was Children of Memory. It finally arrived and I did start it directly after receiving it. I don't know. For me, Amazon kind of like took really long to deliver this book. But yeah, this is the third part in the Children of Time series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And I absolutely loved the series. All three parts did get 5 stars for me. This one as well. Obviously, I can't tell you much about the story. But what I like about the series is that every book kind of plays on a different planet. And yeah, you kind of like collect characters throughout the books. And so there are some characters in here that we already know from the previous books, but they do find a new planet and a new problem there, and that is what I love about the series. It is so diverse. It made a lot of fun to read it, and yeah, for me personally, absolutely incredible. It has a bit of a time loop as a theme for the book, and I really enjoyed that. I know that not a lot of people enjoy that. The way it was done in this book, so that is the book has like, I think it doesn't have bad reviews on Goodreads, but it doesn't have like amazing reviews because of how the story plays out, but for me it worked so well and I really loved that. So yeah, I did start the month really strong. After that, I actually continued with a horror book because I felt like reading some good horror. I got this in my first horror Illumi crate. I think it's called Evernight, I think. I'm sorry. Every time I put this book in front of a camera, everything gets really dark. So yeah, I'm gonna put it quickly here. But yeah, it's called Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcias. I was afraid that I wouldn't like it because of the other book by her that I read, but I actually really enjoyed this one. For me, it's more like a supernatural suspense book, and it is about films and horror films and yeah, supernatural stuff, curses, all of that. And yeah, I think the character, I'm gonna take it down, but I think the character development was really great in this book. I really liked the realness of the relationship from our two main characters. They are friends forever pretty much. They met as children, and yeah, they kind of meet, one of them moves and they meet an older horror film director who lives in the same apartment because of some mix-up past, and so they meet him and he kind of like ropes them in to finish his last film that he never finished, and things go kind of wrong from there. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to read that book, even though it wasn't technically what I thought it would be, because obviously I did think there would be like a really like horror book, but for me it's more like, you know, a little bit like supernatural. From like the feeling, you have like these suspenseful moments, but it's not really horror. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, even though I'm really not a person that is into films. So a few things went over my head, but if you love films, I think Silver Nitrate would be a really great book for you. Then I continued with an audiobook, actually a true crime audiobook that was new to my library, and that is called Last Call, a true story of love, lust and murder in queer New York. And I gave that 4 stars. I think it's a really impactful book. It talks about a series of murders that happened in queer New York, in bars. Well, the victims were picked up in bars, and there was a lot of misconduct by the police. just general by the public, you know. The murders happened in like, I don't know, I think the 80s roughly. In the past, where like police work for queer people really wasn't there. There were a lot of problems, and all of that is really described in the books. Also, the problems with going to court. There is a really bad court case in there that I had to pause while listening to it because I was so shocked and so angry that I just had to pause and then continue later on, you know, after calming down. Because obviously I can't change that, you know, it's in the past, but I was really shocked about how that went. So yeah, I think it's an important book. It highlights the people, it highlights the community that was back then, which I think is really great, and the perpetrator was just, you know, a footnote. But yeah, if you are into true crime, I think this is one that is really important because it's a case that is not often talked about, because it's kind of forgotten by a lot of people. And so yeah, the book I think is really impactful. There just were some scenes where, I don't know, I think the book took too long. It could have been a little bit different. The style could have been a little, you know, more like, how do I present the data could have been a little bit different at some points for me, which is why I gave it. Then, while I'm on vacation, I listened to another Agatha Christie book, and that is Hickory Dickory Dock. Yeah, 3 stars. I don't know what to say about Agatha Christie books because they always get the same rating by me. I don't think they are brilliant, I don't think they're bad, I think they're just really average murder mystery books, you know. But yeah, this one is about a boarding house that is kind of managed by the sister of his assistant from Hercule Poirot. And yeah, things start to go missing, they have a thief on their hands, and Poirot starts investigating, and it's like a way bigger thing than initially thought about. And yeah, so that is pretty much what the story is. I still am not the biggest fan of Poirot. I think he's like a really dismissive, rude person, and I kind of don't like that. Yeah, I really actually prefer the films, if we're honest. But yeah, 3 stars, average. If you like Agatha Christie, you probably will like it. If you don't like it, probably shouldn't read it, you know. And then I listened to The Birds and Don't Look Now by Daphne du Maurier. For some reason I have a problem with speaking her name. I don't know why. Probably because I'm not good at French, and I'm assuming her name is French. But yeah, I gave that 3 stars. I really like The Birds. Both of them horror stories. I really like The Birds. It's pretty much about birds going wild. And our main characters are one family, 2 children, mother and father, and pretty much their struggle to survive. Brilliant horror story. Works fantastic as an audiobook. I really like that one. If it was only that one, I think I would have given it 4.5 stars. Sadly, Don't Look Now was in there too, and that is a story where a couple goes to Venice after their daughter died and their son is in boarding school. And they meet 2 like psychic sisters, and they are pretty much like, yeah, we can see your daughter is happy that you're here, and it all spirals away from there. And I don't know, I didn't like the ending. I think the husband in the story was really weird. It's also mostly a story about him, weirdly. It's a little bit about how you deal with grief, but the rest is just really weird and nonsensical, and yeah, I didn't enjoy that one, which is why I gave that one 2 stars, and so put them together, because they are together in the collection, I did give the collection 3 stars. But yeah, if you can just get Birds, listen to that one, fantastic as an audiobook. Don't Look Now, don't bother. The next book, sadly, was a little bit of a disappointment, and that is Dennis Lien, the only book physically I read whilst on holiday, because I thought, you know, a great detective novel would be like really like vacation, like, you know, I really love sitting, but we went to Denmark, to the beach, to the ocean, and just like sitting there in my cabin and just reading this, you know, hearing the ocean. It was really nice. But the book was kind of a disappointment. It's A Drink Before the War by Dennis Lien. And I read Shutter Island by him, and I love Shutter Island. That is a brilliant book. If you read one Dennis Lien book, read Shutter Island. But this one is the first part of his detective agency novels, and the detectives are called Patrick and Angela. And I do like the concept of the story. It's pretty much a politician goes to them and is like, yeah, I need you. There's a woman who worked for me, and she took some documents, and then she, vanished pretty much. And they want the documents back because they need them. And then from there, it devolves into gang violence and gang war, and our detectives being in the middle of that. And I liked the conclusion, and I did like why they were in the gang war. I personally just hate anything that has to do with gang violence and stuff like that. Obviously, if it's like true crime or like, stuff that happens in reality, it's different. But in books, I don't like that topic. It's, for me, generally, politics in books I hate. And stuff like gang violence I also hate. I think it's just that I get so angry over it in real life that I really don't want to have it in my fiction. And I really didn't get that from the blurb, that this is a book about gang violence. And would I have known that, I wouldn't have picked the book up. So I gave it 3 stars for the fact that I like his writing style. I did like the conclusion, and I did like kind of the reason and the only the stuff that the detectives did. But because I really don't like the gang violence thing, and a little bit of like some of the more like problems that I won't mention because of spoilers, but there were some things in there that I was like a little bit like, I don't know if that needed to be in there. So yeah, 3 stars. It's not a bad book, it's just not for me. I think that's important to mention because obviously these are very subjective reviews, and I don't like a lot of things. I'm a really picky person in general, and so yeah, I didn't like it. If you like books about gang violence, you will like it because it's a good book. Let's talk about the book that was actually bad. I started to give it 2 stars. I have a hard time giving 1 star, so it does get 2 stars. But this is Map of Bones by James Rollins. This is the second James Rollins book I've read, but the first one in this series with the Sigma Force series. This is somewhere in between. It's not the first one, but I don't think that matters much. The Sigma Force team is just utterly incapable. It's really, really hard to read. They over and over again fall into the same traps, and yeah, there were never any stakes that were really high. Nobody ever dies, the team just gets through it all because obviously it's a Sigma Force, you want them all to be there, but that means that there are no stakes in this book. And it really is kind of like a little bit like the Dan Brown books with like all of like finding symbols. This one is pretty much about also the church, because these are all kind of, it's always about churches for some reason. But yeah, it's about some relics that get stolen from a German church, and there are 2 pretty much like cults that have their hands in it. And then we have the Sigma Force, and yeah, they always run into traps, solve these riddles, have a shootout with no real stakes, and then off to the next side, doing the exact same thing again, and nothing changing, which made this book really, really boring. It is way too big for that. Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't really fun. It's not the worst writing I read, which is why I gave it 2 stars, because maybe somebody likes this kind of a story. I think it's too long. I think it's too repetitive. There are no stakes in the story. Don't pick it up. I read another book by James Rollins that was way better than this, so I'm a little bit confused why this one is so bad. And also I have a lot more of the Sigma Force books, so we'll see if they're all that bad, because I will read them, because I own them. But yeah, this one in particular, don't bother. Then I listened to 2 non-fiction books. That was the point where I was pretty much like, I don't know what to read. I am sick of the books that I started. I put everything away, so I did listen to 2 audiobooks that were non-fiction. And the first one is Hurricane Lizards and Plastic Squid, and it's by Thor Hansen. It's a wonderful audiobook. I gave it 5 stars. I found him through a Wired interview on YouTube, and I loved his interview, and at the end, you know, it said like, yeah, I have these books out, and so I picked up one of his, which is that one. And it's pretty much about climate change, but it's not one of those books where it's like, oh my god, everything is bad, we're all gonna die, you know. It's a book where he focuses on different species of animals, and it's like, this is how they adapt. This is why they will die. This is why they can't adapt. This animal humans will have to help, you know, stuff like that. And I think it's, whilst it still really shows you how bad climate change is, it still gives you this little bit of hope, you know, that not all is lost. Most of the things are probably lost, but not all. And he's just really passionate, and I like the writing style. I like how he presents the information. It was really, really, really interesting, you know. So yeah, if you, I mean, I didn't know I want to read a book about climate change, but I did, and I liked it. So if you want to read a book about climate change, go read a Thor Hansen book. He has 2 others out, as far as I know, which I will definitely get. One is about bees, and the other one, I already forgot again. But yeah, I will get those because I was really impressed by this book. And then the second one wasn't quite as good, but it was still good, and that is If Nietzsche Was a Narwhal. That is by Justin Gregg. It's a book that, first of all, taught me a lot about Nietzsche I didn't know, which is kind of funny. And then it talks about the definitions of like intelligence, dumbness, stupidity, all of that, and then compares animals to humans, and kind of like tells you why some comparisons just aren't fair, and that a lot of people pretty much like think animals are dumber than they are just because they don't have like, they don't think like humans, but they still think, you know. It's really, really interesting. Some things I feel like they're, well, I will say the author has a little bit of like a disadvantage, because obviously research into those topics isn't that big, because there isn't really that much interest, sadly, in the topic, because I think it's a really interesting topic. Yeah, but because there isn't that much research, obviously some topics he just has to say, okay, we don't have much research, the research that we have is that. And at some points I was like, okay, but I don't agree with the research, like personal opinion, which obviously I'm not a professor, I'm not a researcher, nothing of that kind. But you know, you kind of like see stuff every day, and so yeah, at some points I just was like, okay, I don't agree with that, but it's interesting to know what his conclusions are about the research. So yeah, but that is why I gave it 4 stars. There were some really interesting things in there. For example, one thing was about like risk-taking and how humans do bungee jumping and stuff, and then he talks about a kind of ape that jumps from trees into water basins, and if they don't hit the middle directly, they will die on the rock on the outside of the water basin. And it's I don't know, it's so human, that kind of thing, you know, what we say, it's so human, but obviously animals do this as well, so it's really interesting. So yeah, nice, it is a nice book, I would say. Listen to it. I think it works really well as an audiobook, so yeah, listen to it and learn something new, you know. There was a lot in there that was really, really interesting. After that, I was in desperate need of a reread to get my book reading juices flowing again. No, but I kind of know. I was in such a reading slump. I just needed something that I know I loved, that would get me back into reading. And that is the reason why I read Coraline. I love this book. It's one of my favorite children's horror stories, because I feel like this is the perfect children's horror story. It is about a lonely girl, you know. I mean, probably you all know the story of Coraline, but yeah, we have a girl with her parents. She moves into a house. It's very boring for her. Her parents don't have time for her, and so she's on her own, and she finds a parallel world with her other mother and other father. They have buttons as eyes, and they kind of want to convince her to stay with them. And from there, it is all bad, kind of. But I don't know, I like the lonely little girl as a main character, but like also she's so inventive, and she has so much fantasy, and she has so much imagination, I just love that. She's a little bit of a dreamer. Yeah, I don't know. For me, this book just works. There's no awkwardness in the book. It's all like a little girl who's pretty much misunderstood by most of the adults around her. And so you can never be sure, like, does she dream all of this or does it really happen? Who knows? But I love the book. And yeah, so it's by Neil Gaiman. The movie is also wonderful. If you haven't watched that yet, you really, really should. But yeah, book and movie, absolutely great. And I loved rereading this book. Sadly, after that, the two books that I then picked to not read fantasy again, to just, get back into reading were bad, sadly. And the first one I've read was Karen Slaughter's Fallen. This is part, I think, 5 or something like that in the Wildfriend series. It was a really bad idea to just start at this part, but this is the book I've got. I don't own the other ones. I just own one other one, and I don't think it's before this. But yeah, it didn't work for me just jumping into the series in the middle. I will start at part 1 at some point. But yeah, this got 3 stars. We have the partner of Wildfriend, Faith. Her mother gets taken by some people. Faith shoots 2 of them, but they have already her mother, and the investigation goes from there. And the pretty much extra problem is that Faith's mother was the head of the drug team at the police, and it turned out that all of the underlings under her were corrupt and took money. And so, yeah, she was suspected of that, but never convicted. And Faith the whole time is like, no, my mother did nothing wrong. I don't know why they have her. And yeah, in the end, it turns out to be something really different. I don't want to really spoil it, but I don't know. I'm not convinced by the characters. I think all of them are kind of weird and rude. I don't really know what to think about them, but that is why I think really, like, starting with this one is maybe a bad idea, because I just didn't have a feeling for the relationship of the characters, that all know each other, obviously, from the books before. So yeah, I think that was a bad idea. So I will definitely lend the first one from my library and start at the first one, though I don't know if I maybe just don't like the characters. Maybe they aren't different if you read them from the start, so who knows. I read better ones, I read worse ones, it's a give and take. But yeah, I personally at this point wouldn't recommend this book. And then the last book I read is another horror book, because I thought, before going back to fantasy, one thriller, one horror. It was a bad idea, So I picked up The Farm by Scott Nicholson. And I have to say, this is one bad horror book. But maybe you would like it, because I really didn't like the setting. The setting is pretty much like this rural town in America, one of those real hillbilly, nobody ever comes here except for tourist season towns. It's that. But like village-sized. And our main characters is a mother and a daughter, and they move there to the new husband of the mother, which she doesn't seem to like much. She doesn't seem to love, and she goes into a life that she hasn't lived before, and she had a job before, and for him, she goes there and tries to be like a homemaker, which she doesn't seem to have any talents at. I have no idea how she thought that would work out. And yeah, right from the beginning, this feels like there should have been a part 1 to give us the background story, but we don't get the background story. So you have scenes where, she hears hoofbeats or like men's boots, and the daughter is like, oh, this is just like the stories my stepdad told us, but you never got told those stories because that happened before the book started. So you're like, okay, what stories? What am I missing here? And so yeah, that was really, really bad. And in the end, it's pretty much a retelling of Sleepy Hollow, but with a completely different setting, different time. It is more modern. There are handies, there are smartphones, landlines, all that. And it's really weird. Goats play a big part, also scarecrows. Nothing was scary because the same horror tropes get repeated and repeated and repeated. I mean, the 5th time a goat goes somewhere and tries to bite somebody, it's really not scary anymore. It's just a goat that bites people. And yeah, it's just like that. The 3rd sauce glass that lands on the ground and smashes. You know, it's not scary anymore because it happens so often. And so yeah, I gave it 2 stars. I was really not impressed. Kind of confused why this got so good reviews on Goodreads, but I have that a lot on Goodreads if I'm honest. But yeah, I'm not impressed. I read better books, I read worse books, so you know, go read Silver Nitrate instead of this. But yeah, those are all of the books I've read in August. As you can see, it was kind of chaotic. A lot of like, it started the month really, really good and then it goes out of the window from there, you know. But yeah, if you have read any of these books, maybe leave in the comments down below how you like them, and maybe we have like a really different opinion. I would love to know that, because I always love to read through the opinions of different other people to tell me maybe what they loved in a book. Maybe I didn't pick that up. But yeah, so leave a comment down below, like the video if you liked it, maybe subscribe, that would mean a lot to me, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!